everyone. I'm Selena Hill, the digital editor at Black Enterprise, and I hope you're enjoying our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Summit. Next up, I'll speak with two innovative entrepreneurs who have created high-tech platforms to recruit Black talent and diversify workplaces. First up, we have Porter Braswell, who is the CEO and co-founder of Jopwell, the leading career advancement platform for Black, Latinx, and Native American students and professionals. Porter is also the host of the Race at Work with Porter Braswell podcast and the author of Let Them See You, published by Penguin Random House. We also have Neda Jenkins, who is the co-founder of Dipper, a data review technology platform that empowers companies to tackle diversity and inclusion, as well as a digital safe space that guides professionals of color to a better workplace, one review at a time. Netta is also a leading voice in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space and the VP of Global Inclusion for Uncork. So Porter, I actually want to kick things off with you. When and why did you start Jopwell?
Yeah, so let's start with the why. So I'm a product of diversity recruiting initiatives and efforts, really starting back when I was in high school. I spent 2 summers interning at Goldman Sachs, my junior and senior summers in high school. I went on to Yale, I played basketball, and fully recognizing I was not going to the NBA, I continued in a very entry-level diversity-focused pipeline and spent 3 summers interning at Goldman Sachs while in college. And while my day-to-day job was to buy and sell currencies, I would often help with diversity recruiting efforts because I was, passionate about the space and being a product of it. I wanted to lend my support. And what I quickly realized is that despite organizations, their best intentions of going out and recruiting a more diversified audience, organizations in all industries were really struggling with more authentically connecting and engaging with an underrepresented group of candidates. And so at the time, if you go back to the spring of 2014, all of the tech companies came out with their lack of diversity stats, and everybody said that there's a lack of diversity because the talent doesn't exist, the pipeline's not there. And of course, that's not the case. And so Ryan and I, my co-founder and I, Ryan sat next to me, we basically said, we could build that pipeline and then also ensure that we are rolling out many solutions because it's never been a pipeline challenge. And so we launched the business in 2015. That's when we went public with Jopwell. And flash forward now, coming up on 6 years. We have hundreds of thousands of members. We work with over 300 companies, and as we set out to do, it's no longer a pipeline challenge. We've been able to solve that.
Yeah, and Netta, I understand that you launched Dipper back in 2019. Can you talk to us about what was the trigger that sparked that?
Oh my goodness. So I'll start off with what the trigger was for my business partner. So her late father had focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, anti-racism when no one was really doing it in the 90s. And for her, what she wanted to do was really take what her father did and combine it and add that into a technology platform, right? All that DEI work. For me, when she had shared the idea with me, I sat down and I'm like, Jacinta, at that time, I had over about 20,000 followers on LinkedIn. Now I have about 55,000 followers, and I receive in-mail messages almost every single day asking me for advice, talking about the mistreatment that folks are, experiencing within organizations. And so when Jacinta and I, had talked about it that day, the light bulb went off and we said, hey, we need to create a platform that's going to be a safe space for professionals of color, specifically Black and Brown people, to share their workplace experiences. We want to also create an engaging space on a continuous basis for them to also be able to ask the questions that they need to ask and gain the insight that they need to gain. And that's what really propelled it and started. And I think, at its core for me, it's about how do we save people's lives? Right? Because we know about what microaggressions are, discrimination is, and the impact of it. And even as I review and I dive into data, what's happening is Black and brown folks are linking microaggressions to suicide, right? And there are no spaces right now that really speak to the Black or brown experience, workplace experience. And so Dipper is really that hub and that level of accountability for corporations as well.
Netta, can you elaborate just a little bit more about this digital community and how it's providing a safe space, but also holding corporations accountable, like the functionality behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happens is there's a member profile side, and then there's also the company profile side. And so for members, what they're able to do is there's going to definitely be this chat component where they can ask questions or they can share what's happening on an ongoing basis, right? And they would then receive that insight. They also have an opportunity to write their reviews, but they also have an opportunity to view the company that they may be interested in and really see, hey, what is the Black or brown experience like? What is the rating of this company? What type of work are they actually doing, right? Because we're all hearing a lot of these empty promises right now from organizations, especially after the death of George Floyd. And so, you know, folks will definitely have the opportunity to take a look at that and be better informed. So we're just super excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Porter, as you mentioned, Jopwell has been around since 2015. How has it increased the number of Black employees at major corporations? How exactly has it done that?
Well, we've done it through leveraging technology. And so basically what ends up happening is by being a two-sided network, on one side, individuals, by creating profiles, we now have the ability to surface relevant jobs, content, events. We can survey the Jopwell community. We get their pulse on what's important to them. And most importantly, we expose them to opportunities that historically our communities haven't been exposed to. And so regardless if you understand if you're qualified or not for an opportunity, through technology and the platform, we can essentially be that internal referral at scale. And so with the companies that partner with Jopwell, everybody's on a different diversity journey, if you will. And so the Fortune 500 companies, a lot of them have been focusing on, you know, DEI initiatives for many years, and they have entry-level programs, they have internship opportunities, they have analyst class, associate classes where they hire in volume. So the number of hires that larger Fortune 500 companies are getting from us can be in the hundreds. When you look at smaller tech companies that are leveraging our platform, it's not necessarily a volume challenge for them. They're trying to understand how to even begin step one of their journey. So how are you defining diversity? How is your employer branding even resonating with our community? So they're really focusing on our platform for driving insights to better, more authentically connect and engage. And then we assist them with understanding that funnel analysis. When people are going in your funnel, where are they falling out? And so depending on the size of a company and where they are on their diversity journey, it's going to cater to you depending on, you know, defining success looks different. And so the more programs you have in place, the more you've been doing this work and the more evergreen type opportunities you have available, then you're going to hire a lot more in volume. The more one-off or on-time hiring for this one, you know, specific person, obviously the less volume. And so it really comes down to the companies that we partner with. But we work with, again, over 300 companies in all industries, all different sizes.
Can you give some examples of the companies that you've worked with?
So most of the major financial institutions currently are partners with Jopwell. A lot of the large known tech companies are currently partners with Jopwell. Really
Can you
well
give
funded.
like examples, like name them? Can you?
Everything's on Jopwell.com. We don't talk about, you know, our partners, but you can go on and see the roster of our clients. And then really well-funded organizations that are looking to get diversity, equity, and inclusion right when they're 200 employees before they become 1,000 employees. And the community, both on the community side and on the partner side, we're growing pretty rapidly.
Cool. So, you know, speaking of insights and some of that data, Netta, I actually want to talk a little bit more about that. If you can give anecdotal examples and data-driven insights yourself on the impact that Dipper is making in the lives of professionals of color.
Yeah, definitely. You know, right now, what people have been sharing with me is that again, there's really no safe space to openly share what's happening, right? What they're experiencing. And what we're seeing is that just as many negative reviews that come in, there are positive reviews. And so people need to know about the places that they should be going to work, right? And I think a lot of companies as well, what's happening is there's this new popular thing. It's the thing, the fad, the thing to do, right? Is diversity, equity, inclusion. But what companies will slowly begin to notice through Dipper is that if they aren't truly taking the proper steps and the actionable steps in order to create impactful change, they're going to see that people from underrepresented groups, especially Black and Brown people, will not go to their organization because now they have core and key insight on what's truly happening. And so what Dipper really wants to do is ensure that we're informing people where to go so that those companies then see an influx of talent, specifically Black and Brown people. And it'll happen on a very organic basis, as opposed to what's happening now. It's like, we need 10 Black people, we need 2 Latinx people, and
filling quotas.
Yeah, filling quotas. But what's happening is they're not really taking care of the root issue, right? And that root issue many times is that level of mistreatment, the microaggressions, the discrimination, being constantly overlooked, right? Or talked down to on a daily basis, or not seeing that your career is propelling because you don't have that champion or that sponsorship. And, you know, I know a lot of people say, well, you know, there's just a few bad apples in a company, Netta. It shouldn't be the entire company is kind of written off, and absolutely not. But at the same time, if a company is, you know, making sure that their employee that may be perpetuating microaggression is staying because that person is adding a lot of value to the bottom line, then yeah, that's not the right thing to do, right? And that's typically what tends to happen, or we tend to see across the board. And so I'm just really excited to see people go to companies that are truly going to value them so that they can grow and propel. Because like I said, it's a real thing when you start to see data that shows microaggressions are linked to suicide.
To your point, Netta, because I do want to just drill home on that just a little bit more, because those sound like symptoms of racism, systemic racism, white supremacy. You know, corporate America has taken a drastic leap into fighting this, you know, ever since 2020 and the events that happened. And we'll talk more about that. But if that's the larger issue here, what can and should corporate companies be doing to fight, you know, something that's literally embedded in the fabric of our country?
Yeah, the first thing is they have to face the fact that this is something that is very deep rooted. A lot of folks don't want to face that fact. A lot of folks are saying, I just spoke with someone yesterday that said, you know what, Netta, when Obama was elected, I thought, hey, we're not in a racist world. So there are a lot of people that are not educated on this or don't want to hear about it. It's kind of that in denial. So they have to, one, face the fact that this is something that's existing historically within our society. And I think the second phase then is, again, educating themselves on these things. What I tend to see is a lot of employers just want for someone to come in and tell them everything, or, hey, Black History Month is here, and like, can you share some things? And it's like, hey, you can go and do that work too. I want to empower you to read about that. I want to empower you to learn, right? So that you're able to grow. And the people that do take those steps, the leaders that do take those steps, they're the ones that are going to be sustainable. They're going to see their organization propel and be very successful. And they're going to see an influx of organic talent. They're not going to have to do too much recruiting, right? And then I think on the flip side, people are just going to be happier. A lot of the times when I think about what we're doing at Dipper, I think about legacy. There's some folks that have reached out to me and said, well, why don't people just create their own businesses? And I'm like, Okay, that's great. That sounds good. But do you know the stats, right? Black women receive 0.2% in venture capital. Latinx women receive 0.1% in venture capital. You know what I mean? So like the stats are extremely low in terms of like the success rate for a business and the type of capital that we end up getting. And so a lot of times we have to manage having a full-time job and also building our businesses and building our brand. So that's not always going to be realistic, right? And so that's how come I think about legacy. I think about my children. They may be business owners, but they may be working for someone. And if they are working for an organization, I want them to be treated right. And I want them to
Absolutely.
be able to, yeah.
So Porter, Netta made excellent points. What are your thoughts on the state of diverse, equitable, and inclusive corporate cultures? And which companies would you say serve as the best models?
So I think the current state of it is that organizations have finally accepted that it can't just be an afterthought. It's a business imperative. And if they want to retain amazing talent, not just diverse talent in general, they have to have a very robust DEI strategy. And I think that strategy starts with first defining diversity. I think oftentimes people jump into this conversation without clearly defining what diversity means to their organization. And then when they're focusing on specific initiatives, they skip over the why. Like, why are you focusing on Black talent? Why are you focusing on women? Or whatever the vertical may be within that diversity umbrella. And so I think oftentimes companies take for granted that people should understand that diversity matters, but they need to be able to clearly articulate it, why it matters to their organization, how are they defining it, and what does success look like? And I think we're now entering into that phase where all organizations, regardless of the size of your company, employees are demanding that from their employers. And those organizations that are getting it right are thriving. And those organizations that got it wrong, they're bearing the consequences of it. And so I think that's the current state that we're in. In terms of organizations that I think do this well, I think it starts with organizations where their CEO, the senior most person within that organization, has a strong perspective, and they are out front. They are talking about it. They're being very authentic in their messaging, and it's not just a one-time thing. They're out front, leading by example, having these dialogues internally and externally, but most importantly internally, and they're providing that roadmap on how to think about success and what those timelines look like.
Netta, can you think of any companies that serve as exemplar models at this time?
Yeah. To Porter's point, I definitely, I agree with him on, the things that he said. I would say an organization that I admire is Ben and Jerry's. And they're an organization that has been talking about anti-racism, anti-Blackness, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging for a very long time, before the murder of George Floyd, right? And so they're unapologetic and they're unafraid to talk about it because they understand how important it is for people to thrive, for people to feel whole, for people to feel safe, in order to break white supremacy and systemic issues. It has to also be the people that, some of the people that have created it or historically. And so they're definitely at the forefront in terms of what they're saying. I mean, even in terms of like their messaging, they were very pointed in the injustices that are happening and how they wanted to take action. And it's something, like I said, they didn't just start. They've been doing it for a very long time, and now they're amplifying it even more. And I love that because other organizations are seeing that and saying, okay, Ben and Jerry's can do it. And they still are winning, right? They're still a successful business. Maybe we can do it. And so that's, even when I'm working with other organizations, that's some of the things that I talk to them about. I think there's a layer of accountability. There has to be DEI KPIs that are cascaded down from the CEO all the way down. And there also has to be, these DEI KPIs that are tied into performance that could potentially impact one's bonus or compensation. So I
Mm.
think there are
Well,
a lot.
when you say DEI KPIs, can you break that down a little bit for us, please? And how does that,
Yeah.
what do you mean by, including that in a performance?
Yeah, absolutely. So DEI KPIs, it may be new to some folks. For me, what I've done is I've created 3 buckets, right? So the first one is recruiting and retention. You want to increase representation. Going back to Porter, what Porter said, why? Why is it? Why is it so meaningful? The next layer is growth and development. That's another DEI KPI. It needs to be measurable. Are the people, in fact, that are on your team, are they growing? Are they propelling? If not, why? Why is it taking so long for this particular person to get a promotion, but everyone else is flying? Who's getting the glamorous work and who's getting the office work? So that's kind of the meat of that. And then the last is branding and engagement. And so for branding and engagement, there is a lot of information out there that talks about if you have a diverse team, you can, your team will perform better, higher productivity, definitely an increase to the bottom line. So there's all of these data points. And so I think for an organization or a department that already has a diverse team, already has folks that are propelling within their career and being promoted, they should then think about, okay, how are we able to do this? And put a measurement to that. So for instance, at Uncork, one of the managers selected that because his team is very diverse. And many of them have been, getting promoted. And so what he did was, as a production support manager, he's looking at the amount of tickets, and they've been able to decrease the amount of tickets substantially. And so what he's doing is putting a measurement to that now. And I'm asking him, well, how is it that you all are able to decrease that? And he's like, Netta, we challenge each other. We're unapologetic. We're unafraid to do that, right? We're in constant communication. We're constantly kind of thinking about different processes and different ways of doing this. And we're also empowering each other. So it's very interesting. And what he wants to do at the end is be able to present that and share that externally of how that is really impactful.
Yeah, no, and thank you so much for that breakdown.
Yeah.
Porter, earlier we touched on the death of George Floyd and the resurgence of Black Lives Matter back in 2020, which had a huge impact on corporate America and its commitment to recruitment, retention, and advancement of Black and Brown people. Everyone put out a statement, everyone put up a Black square. Some people did it effectively, other corporations didn't. But since that's happened and that the onset of Black Lives Matter, how would you say Jopwell has actually been affected? Like, have you seen a significant increase in Jopwell services by major corporations? And what has been the increase in corporate clients?
Yeah. So we've never had more demand than what we currently have. The thing with Jopwell is that, we started this business to, again, initially attack the pipeline challenge. And we always knew it wasn't a pipeline challenge. We always knew that there were other significant obstacles that really stood in the way of companies building more diverse, equitable, and inclusive cultures. And so we've been working on furthering our solutions over the last, coming up on 6 years now. And so when the murder of George Floyd happened and companies were coming out with these statements, a lot of organizations realized for the first time that, again, before they even get to hiring, they got to get their internal culture right. So as a result of that, we've actually rolled out a pretty robust advisory business over the last 4 months or so. We now have about 6 people on that team within Jopwell that focus on it. And we are advising organizations on how to build diverse, equitable, inclusive cultures, how to respond to moments of crisis. We just held a Jopwell partner company event where we talked about what's the framework for responding to a moment in crisis, because it's going to continue to happen. And so there's been a lot of interesting things that we've been able to kind of go into more of the white space that's been around us historically, and really take advantage of what we've been able to produce, because we have this incredibly engaged community of individuals. We have all these companies, we know what works well. And so now we can apply those best practices at scale. Again, in terms of like the demand for Jopwell, it's a challenging time for us. We are scaling virtually. So anytime you're scaling is a difficult thing. To do it virtually is also, it's a layer on top of how difficult it is. So, I think from like a headcount perspective, we're going to be doubling in size. We'll probably be close to 100 over the next few months. And to be able to do that again virtually, now we're thinking about onboarding. What does that look like? And how do we ensure that our culture is still, the best culture that we're trying to build when everybody's virtual and we haven't met people? And so what does that look like? And taking on new relationships where we are more than just the platform, we're now advising organizations. And so, I think that they're all good problems to have as we're scaling and we're thinking about the future. But what's been nice is that we never had to change what we did when the murder of George Floyd happened. We just showed up to work and kept doing what we were doing. We didn't change anything. We didn't have to do anything differently. We just kept doing what we've always been doing.
And I'm so happy to hear that you guys are scaling. In addition to that, has Jopwell also been able to significantly increase mid-management or senior management ranks, or does it more so focus on just entry-level employees?
So the volume of the hires are going to be for your entry and mid-level talent, just given that there's more volume at that level. Also at that level, let's call it your 20 to early 30 somethings in that general age range. You're looking for your first, second, maybe third job. So transferable skills are still applicable at that stage. And you leverage a platform to get your next opportunity. Kind of once you cross over into that more senior level, it's more of that on-time hiring, less pipelines. It's more of that intimate connectivity. Who do you know? Who's being referred? And so we definitely operate in that zone, but it's of course less volume.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. Netta, we're definitely in a different time and culture and climate now. What do you hope Dipper can do ultimately? Like, what's the ultimate goal you see for Dipper?
Yeah, the ultimate goal is really to, again, at its core is to make sure that people are informed to make better decisions and save people's lives. That is most important to us. And I think also collectively bringing Black and Brown people together. I think that there's so much power in that. We're all yearning for each other, right? And this is a great space to definitely do that. And I think, also with technology and with the Dipper platform, we'll be able to reach so many people, even on an international basis. So we're excited.
Absolutely. And Porter, for you as well, Jopwell was doing so much in the DE&I space. What are some of the longer term objectives and goals that you guys are aiming for?
A continuation of what we're doing and just doing it more at scale. Again, we're a holistic diversity solution. And so specifically really focusing on the talent acquisition side of things. But as we get more into the retention and culture side of things, there's a whole suite of products that we're thinking about rolling out. Again, with scale also comes thinking about capital and what that looks like for us. We're backed by Y Combinator, Andreessen Horowitz, K4 Capital, Magic Johnson, Cue Ball Capital, SJF, a ton of amazing investors. And so we're very fortunate that we have, a lot of incredible individuals on our team. And so as we think about scale and what comes next for us as a business, we're pretty well positioned. And so we're incredibly grateful for that, but recognize that we have a huge responsibility in front of us as we're starting to see there's so many challenges, and we've always known that's the case. Again, it's never been a pipeline challenge. It's been everything else. And so our goal is just to constantly roll out more and more solutions.
Yeah. And, speaking of solutions, as we begin to wrap up this conversation, both of you guys have platforms that have been a solution in this space. How can people join your platform and support it and continue themselves to become part of the solution?
Yeah. So with Dipper today, what folks can do is definitely share their reviews, write their reviews through our site. We're officially launching the platform, which we've invested so much funds into on March 16th. So we're really excited. And that's when people can definitely build out their profiles. They'll see the interactiveness of it. Goodness, when I talk about it, I get super excited, but everyone should definitely head over to Dipper and share their reviews and then plug in their profiles too.
Awesome. For Jopwell, you can create a profile. It's jopwell.com, jopwell.com. You can create a profile, and if you are an employer looking to recruit diverse talent, we have the pipeline, and we have a lot of different solutions for you.
Okay, well, Netta Porter, thank you so much for your time.